Mic check 1 2 3. Mic check 1 2 3. All right, we are live. Welcome everyone to As the World Turns Wednesday. Today is our geopolitics show. I'd like to say hello everybody watching. Hello to everyone that is going to watch the playback. Today we have a good show for you all today. Where some of the topics we're going to cover is China and the U.S. trade war, Russia, U.S. and Russia. You talks about Africa, more specifically Ethiopia and Eritrea, also Haiti, and one or two other points that we'll be, excuse me, talking about tonight. Hope everyone is having a good day today. Um, as you all know, Monday we did not have a show because I started the class on edX.org, started my blockchain technology class. So we had Monday show on Saturday. That's why if you tuned in Monday and then we didn't come on, we had a show. We had an automation, space and technology, space and technology show Saturday. So you can look at the playback. It's in our catalog. Look at that playback. It was a good show. We talked about, as always, automation, blockchain, AI, virtual reality, and at the end we talked about space technology. Um, Gonna let a few more people come in. Let a few stragglers come on in. From we, our show will resume back to its regular schedule next week. In terms of Mondays, it will be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'll try to give you all more time on any changes, more of a heads up on any changes that we may do. But for now, we still will we'll still have our Monday, Wednesday, Friday uh, show. So, so with that said, I think I should just go on ahead and start the show. People will come in when they are able to. I like to give at least, excuse me, I like to give about 5 minutes for people to get the link, get settled in, come on in. All right. Oh, one more thing. I'm sure you all have seen the new uh, title to the channel. It's no longer AEIOU. It's right now. It's the Black Brain Trust. That title's a working title right now. It's not set in stone. We're kicking around some titles. See what sticks. Um, I like it to be more organic than just naming the show. Well, naming the YouTube channel off the back end. It's more organic. So this, like I said, it's a working title. It may change. It's not. This is not going to be one of the channels that constantly change. It's not going to be a channel that constantly changes title. We're just seeing what works now in our early days of doing this. So the Black Brain Trust is a working title. Like I said, it's working title. It's not set in stone, and it may change within the next couple of days. So we will let you all know. Gonna give it around 15 more seconds, and I'll kick the show off at 8:05. All right. So our first topic comes from usnews.com, and it's titled China urges US to avoid actions that endanger peace in Taiwan Strait. This comes This is from January 9th. Reuters, Beijing, by Reuters. China on Monday urged the United States to avoid actions that endanger peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait after two U.S. warships sailed through the waters, a voyage likely seen in self ruled Taiwan as a sign of Washington's support. U.S. officials said two destroyers carried out the passage over the weekend, calling the maneuver a routine transit through international waters. It was the first trip by U.S. Navy ships through the Taiwan Strait in about a year and comes amid heightened U.S. China tensions as the world's two biggest economies spar in what could be a prolonged trade dispute. The ship's passage the ship's passage also followed a series of Chinese military drills around the island that have increased friction between Taipei and Beijing. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hu Chun Hu Chunying said China had followed the ship's movements and had already expressed concerns to the US over this. You must state the Taiwan issue is related to Chinese sovereignty and territorial integrity, Hu told reporters at a regular news briefing in Beijing. We urge the United States to at once scrupulously abide by the One China principle and avoid harming U.S. China relationships and peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, she added. Taiwan Defense Ministry said on Saturday the situation was in accordance with regulations. There has been no further comment from Taipei on the passage of the two U.S. warships. China claims Taiwan as its own China claims Taiwan as its own and has never renounced the use of force to bring under its control what it sees as a wayward province. Beijing regularly says Taiwan is the most sensitive issue in China's relations with the United States. Excuse me. Washington has no formal ties with Taiwan, but is the island's main source of arms and is bound by law to help it defend itself. U.S. overtures toward Taiwan, from unveiling a new de facto embassy to passing the Taiwan Travel Act, which encourages U.S. officials to visit, have further escalated tension between Beijing and Taipei. China's hostility toward Taiwan has grown since Tsai Ing-wen, uh, Tsai Ing-wen from the pro-independence Democratic Progressive Party won presidential elections on the island in 2016. All right, so that's the article. This I've been. How you doing, Mike? How you doing today?
What's going on, brother?
Uh, all right, I'm good. I'm good.
All right.
Um, you got the article. China urges U.S. to avoid actions that endanger peace of Taiwan Strait. I did not know that. Of course, the U.S. always do this, sail warships or aircraft carriers or some type through the Taiwan Straits. But I don't know recently they did this, and as we all know, that China has been building up man-made islands in the South China Sea and not only militarizing them, but putting boats around them to make it difficult for any other non-Chinese ships to pass. And this has been seen as China's flexing its muscle to bring other Asian territories under the quote unquote one China rule principle. That is. What else about this article that I'm missing?
I mean, the United States, in order for them to deal with Taiwan, they have to go through China. The same thing with Hong Kong. So in 1997, the British um, reneged its presence in Hong Kong and gave it back to the Chinese, basically. So now Hong Kong, although Hong Kong is considered to be separate from China, it's a province of China, similar to how Montreal is a province of Canada. You would never see Montreal and Quebec and the rest of those provinces in Canada try to do business with the United States individually. It only does business with Canada itself. So if the United States can respect, the Canadian government's position in its provinces, why can't it respect the provinces of China mainland itself?
Mm. Now, I'm gonna guess that the reason they're doing it is to continue the influence of its world power across the globe, and with that, even if that means creating some type of strife between two a province of China and mainland China, this being this in this in this being Taiwan and China. That's why I'm guessing the reason why they're doing this is to continue their their power.
Yeah, but even though if they try to do something like that, it's going to force a reaction from China. China's not going to sit down and take that on, as a, lying down. They're not going to take it lying down. They're going to actually get up and actually react to um, those political maneuvers that the United States is trying. So if you're going to provoke China into a war, then what's going to happen is China's going to end up trying to take the whole entire Taiwanese province.
Hmm.
Because as it stands right now, it's stable between China and Taiwan. But if the United States decides to interrupt that stability, then you're not going to get anything out of that. If you're the United States, you're going to get China trying to invade Taiwan, and it's going to push out the United States, and you're not going to have anything to work with at that point.
Right. So it's a almost a touch and go situation where yes, like the article said, the U.S. is bound by law to help Taiwan in any uh, military backing, but they don't want to go all out. If it's not a if they're not if Taiwan is not at strife with China right now, they don't want to just go in and say, okay, we're here, we're America, we back in Taiwan. Then obviously, like you say, even our next topic is talk about how Taiwan is a very touchy subject with China, and how China doesn't really China not really, but China doesn't recognize Taiwan as a sovereign nation. It recognizes Taiwan as okay, you belong to China. All this other stuff you're talking about, we don't recognize that. We don't know what you're talking about. You belong to us. So yeah, you're right. I understand what you're saying. It's like I said, it's a touch and go subject.
Yeah, Taiwan is a commonwealth of China as it stands because they have their own separate military, they have their own policies, but they still have to answer to the main Chinese government in Beijing and Shanghai. So it would be the equivalent of trying to do business with Puerto Rico, but not actually going back to Washington to talk to them. Which is why you have these I forget the name of the policy that doesn't allow for international ships to come into Puerto Rico. It only allows American ships to go into Puerto Rico
I know what you're talking
because
about.
in
It's
order to do business with Puerto Rico, you have to actually go through the United States.
yeah, is it something like the Jones something, the Jones policy, something like that? I know what you're talking about. They got to go all the way to U.S. then come back to Puerto Rico, even if they pass in Puerto Rico. They got yeah. I heard of that. Okay, all right. Any other points on this one?
Nope.
All right. Our next article on the docket is actually YouTube video. This is from China Unscripted YouTube channel, and the title of the video is "The Invasion of Taiwan," featuring Ian Easton. I heard this uh, interview Monday night. It's about an hour long, and how they were talking about, like I just mentioned, how Taiwan is a touchy subject with China, and U.S. Major U.S. intervention would it's not really good at this point. And as you see in the photo, this is the president of China, President Taiwan, and of course, you see Donald Trump. But throughout the interview, they were saying how one thing that caught my ear was how in China they have a replica of the Taiwanese equivalent of the White House, and how they practice military maneuvers, shoot missiles at it. It's a 1-to-1 scale of different areas in Taiwan, just in case if they were to go to war with Taiwan, they are already trained in terms of okay the floor plans and other things that they need to be trained in. Now, I'm sure you heard this interview. What are some more things that stood out to you?
Well, it's not uncommon. And I'm going based off the interview. It's not uncommon for a nation state, a nation, to reenact invasions of another country. The United States does that. Used to have they used to have a plan and policy for invading Canada.
Mm,
In case the Canadians had flipped, they didn't recognize Canada until 1920, until after World War One.
okay.
So there's many plans that are written up, um, military plans written up to invade multiple countries in case they have to. They know all the side streets inside Russia, all the main streets inside Moscow, which streets to go down, which places to bomb. They do it for every single country. So every country does the same exact thing, war planning.
Mm,
Because if they have to take Taiwan, Taiwan already has its own military. They have their military capabilities would keep China from invading in the first place. So
okay. All right. Yeah, like I said, I heard the article, and I know anti gravity is right now. He the one that sent this article. It was a pretty good not article. It
yeah,
was a
shout out to
pretty
Noah.
good interview. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shout out to Noah anti. It's a pretty good interview. As all shows, the links will be in the description if you want to follow along. I would recommend you not read, but listen to this interview. Some points I skip on my mind right now, but all in all, it was a pretty good interview. Aside from the bad jokes from the people that were doing the interview, um, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
It's actually pro-American than it is objective. It's it speaks from an American point of view that somehow America has to do something about Taiwan, or their sovereignty, or their political investments in Southeast Asia are in jeopardy and things of that nature. When in reality, China's not doing that inside the Atlantic Ocean, or inside the Gulf of Mexico, or in Latin America. You don't see China or Russia trying to kick out American commonwealths like Puerto Rico. They're not doing that. So why, I'm going by the interview. Why is there such an urgency for America to flex its muscles, but when China flexes its muscles inside the South China Sea, as the name states, it belongs to them. It's not the South American Sea. It's not the white man's sea. It's the South China Sea. So if they want to
Mm-hmm.
put reefs, or build islands on top of reefs, and put up and militarize them, that's their business. It's not the United States business.
I understand your point, but we all know America is the quote unquote global power, so they they have to do what they do and they have to do what they do to flex their global power, even if it means interfering with foreign affairs, or overthrowing governments, or doing unsuccessful coups. That they have to do what they do. We're the global power. We are America. Oh, you can't do that. That isn't that that isn't humane. You can't do that to them people. But soon as someone else throws America's dirt in America's face, oh, how could you do that? That's the past, or whatever spin they put on it. Hey, it's America.
It's called American exceptionalism.
There you go. American sectionalism. Well, there you have it, folks. Taiwan and China. No, we'll keep you all update with what's going on. Right now, as you know, like what you said, it's pretty calm right now. But if things escalate, you all can hear it here. All right. Our next article comes from Al Jazeera, and it is Ethiopia and Eritrea declare war has come to an end. This is from June 9th. Leaders of Horn of African nations signed joint peace agreement, officially ending decades of diplomatic and armed strife. Ethiopia and Eritrea have declared their state of war over after landmark talks between the neighboring countries' leaders as part of a historic agreement that will see the opening of embassies, development of ports, and resumption of flights. The sudden reapproachment the sudden rapprochement ends a decades-long Cold War over border disputes that hurt both countries. Eritrean Information Minister Yemane Gibremeskel, quoting from a joint declaration of peace and friendship, said on Monday that a new era of peace and friendship has been ushered in. The state of war that existed between the two countries has come to an end, he wrote on Twitter. Both countries will work to promote close cooperation in political, economic, social, cultural, and security areas, Yemaine added. The agreement was signed by Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki and Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed on Monday morning at State House in Asmara, the capital of Eritrea. The people of our region are joined in common purpose, Abe said on Monday after signing the landmark declaration. Ethiopia's state broadcaster said the two men had agreed to participate in the development of ports, potentially a huge economic boost for both countries, particularly landlocked Ethiopia, which has one of Africa's fastest growing economies. The deal also included the deal would also include a resumption of phone connections, Ethiopia's foreign ministry said. Abe arrived in Asmara on Sunday, where he was welcomed at the airport by Isaias. The two men shared a brotherly embrace at the airport runway before being cheered on by thousands of Eritreans who took to the streets to greet them. At a dinner hosted by Isaias late on Sunday, Abe said diplomatic, trade, transport, and communication ties would be reestablished and borders reopened. We agreed that the airlines will start operating, the ports will be accessible, people can move between the two countries, and the embassies will be open, Abe said. We will demolish the wall and, with love, build a bridge between the two countries, he said. Abe left Asmara after signing the joint agreement on Monday. The visit comes a month after Abe surprised people by fully accepting a peace deal that ended a 2 year border war between the two countries. Last month's decision to fully accept the deal was the biggest and most surprising reform yet announced by Ethiopia's prime minister, who took office in April and quickly set off a wave of reforms, freeing journalists and opposition figures from prison, opening up the state run economy, and unblocking hundreds of websites after years of anti government protests demanding more freedoms. A high level Eritrean delegation, led by Foreign Minister Osman Saleh, had earlier visited the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, last month for peace talks. The Horn of Africa nation has historically been Ethiopia's largest trading partner, and Eritrea is the largest importer of cocoa and palm oil. Hello.
You're on.
Yeah, I don't know. Man, I didn't know I left off. I know I was booting. I don't know what happened. What did I leave off at? Do you know?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Where did I leave off at?
You were in the Ethiopia, the Eritrea, ending of the war and mending of ties.
Okay. Let's see. I'll just start with. Hey, I'll start here. Eritrean Information Minister Gibra Mesco, Gabriel Mesco, quoting from a joint declaration of peace and friendship, said on Monday that a new era of peace and friendship has been ushered in. The state of war that excuse me, the state of war that exited between the two countries has come to existed between the two countries has come to an end, he wrote on Twitter. Both countries will work to promote close cooperation in political, economic, social, cultural, and security areas, Yemen added. The agreement was signed by Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki and Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed on Monday morning at State House in Asmara, the capital of Eritrea. The people of our region are joined in common purpose, Abe said on Monday after signing the landmark declaration. Ethiopia's state broadcaster said the two men had agreed in principle to the development of ports, potentially a huge economic boost for both countries, particularly landlocked Ethiopia, which has one of Africa's fastest growing economies. The deal would also include a resumption of phone connections, Ethiopia's foreign ministry said. Abe arrived in Asmara on Sunday, where he was welcomed at the airport by Isaias. The two men shared a brotherly embrace at the airport runway before being cheered on by thousands of Eritreans who took to the streets to greet them. At a dinner hosted by Isaias late on Sunday, Abe said diplomatic, trade, transport, and communications ties would be reestablished and borders reopened. We agreed that the airlines will start operating. The ports will be accessible. People can move between the two countries, and the embassies will be open, Abe said. We will demolish the wall and, with love, build a bridge between the two countries, he said. Abe left Asmara after signing the joint agreement on Monday. The visit came a month after Abe surprised people by fully accepting the peace deal that ended a 2 year border war between the two countries. Last month's decision to fully accept the deal was the biggest and most surprising reform yet announced by Ethiopia's prime minister, who took office in April and quickly set off a wave of reforms, freeing journalists and opposition figures from prison, opening up the state run economy, and unblocking hundreds of websites after years of anti government protests demanding more freedoms. A high level Eritrean delegation, led by Foreign Minister Osman Salah, said earlier visited the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa last month for peace talks. The Horn of Africa nations remained at loggerheads since Ethiopia rejected a United Nations ruling and refused to cede to Eritrea land along the country's border following a 1998 2000 war that killed 80,000 people. Now, real the thing that stuck out to me of why they may have signed this peace agreement was in this paragraph right here, and I'll reread the three-line paragraph. Ethiopian state broadcaster said the two men had agreed to participate in the development of ports, potentially a huge economic boost for both countries, particularly land like Ethiopia, which has one of Africa's fastest growing economies. So I'm guessing that the reason that they came to agreement after a long civil war is because they have more. to lose in terms financially than to gain if they continue this border war.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right in your assessment. The development of rail projects similar to what Kenya has with the SGR from China. Um, Ethiopia wants the same thing, and the only water access to the Red Sea is through Eritrea. So um, it's a win-win for both of them. Eritrea doesn't really manufacture anything, but they have water access, and you can basically charge Ethiopia, 1/3 of revenue that it would take for them to bring the goods in. So Eritrea makes $1, and Ethiopia makes $2. So this is going to develop Eritrea's economy overall. You'll probably see some rapid development because you need the rail links, you need the fiber optic communications, you need the 5G access, you need development of paved roads. Electricity needs to be redeveloped. You're probably going to see electricity come from Ethiopia because it's already being generated with the now the now dam that has been developed. So that sort of electrical generation, energy generation being developed is going to be pumped right back into Eritrea. It's a win-win for both of them.
Hmm. Now, how long do you think this agreement could last? Because let's say, I think you said possibly Eritrea gets $1, Ethiopia gets $2. Let's say under that. How long do you think this could last? If let's say Ethiopia starts to bring an influx of capital into the country, and people say, hey, they pull up Donald Trump and they say, we can have more money, but Eritrea is, taking a third of our money, and they only got that border because of certain circumstances. We're building up their economy. We shouldn't, be building up their economy. Leave that up to them. How long do you think this peace talk could last?
As long as it needs to. Eritrea is the only way they can get to the Red Sea. They have no other way to get into the Red Sea. Somalia and Somaliland has already cut them off.
What about Djibouti? What? Okay, let me throw this
Djibouti doesn't want
curveball
anything
at
to
you.
do with Ethiopia
Okay, well
because remember
that's
they're
not.
being occupied by 8 different global militaries. So
Yeah.
Djibouti already gets its own income from those 8 militaries or those 8 nation states that are basically pinching a tent there. So they don't need Ethiopia's money. So the main concern is um, building up port access to allow Ethiopia to get in and get out. As it stands, they have no way of reacting if their shipping goods are being held up in the Red Sea, either by Yemen or by some other pirate firm through piracy. They have no other way to respond. So they build up Eritrea's navy, or they share a naval port with Eritrea and start being more assertive with their foreign policy.
Okay, so that's the only way they can do that, by signing an agreement with Eritrea.
Yeah, Eritrea needs the money, so that's why it makes more sense. No one wants to really um, build a base inside Eritrea because it's unstable. The political structure is unstable there. So everybody put their base inside Djibouti for a reason.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's move on to our next point. This one is from Haiti. This is from Al Jazeera, dated July  8th. Haiti suspends fuel price hike after daily protests. Haiti's president tells protesters to go home after suspending fuel price increases. that triggered violent protests. Haiti's government has suspended a proposal that would have nearly doubled fuel prices after a violent protest killed at least two people and left the capital, Port-au-Prince, at a standstill. President Jovenel Moise, I'm pronouncing that wrong, called on protesters to go home later on Saturday after the announcement, but Reuters news agency, citing local media, reported that the government's decision to back down did not keep residents from taking to the streets. Prime Minister Jacques Lafontaine announced the temporary suspension of an increase in prices of up to 50% for gasoline, diesel, and kerosene on Saturday afternoon, just a day after they were announced. As you as soon as you speak, I listen, Moise said in an address broadcast on state television. Because you started sending me this message last night, I received it and corrected what had to be corrected. To those watching me tonight, I ask you all, go home, he said, adding authorities had been directed to clean up the streets. But some demonstrators erected flaming roadblocks, while others attacked hotels and businesses late on Saturday, Reuters reported, citing local television footage. Port-au-Prince paralyzed. On Friday, Haiti's Commerce and Economy Ministries announced that fuel price increases, including a 38% price jump for gasoline, 47% for diesel, and 51% for kerosene, will take effect at midnight, triggering violent protests. The capital, Port-au-Prince, and its surrounding areas have stood paralyzed since Friday afternoon, with major routes blocked by blockade barricades, some made of burning tires, and some protesting calling for a revolution in the impoverished country. Similar protests broke out in Cap Haïtien, the second largest city, as well as the communes of Les Cayes, Jacmel, and Petit Goût. The protests prompted several major carriers, including American Airlines, Air France, Delta, JetBlue, and Copa, to cancel flights to Port-au-Prince. The U.S. Embassy in Haiti advised personnel and Americans of the country to shelter in place. Just before the suspension was announced, the leader of Haiti, lower house of parliament, had threatened a government takeover if the fuel price increases were not reversed. The poor people want to be able to eat, one mass protester told Reuters as a car blazed behind him. I want to tell President Jovenel Moise that Haiti is not for him and his family. Haiti is for every Haitian. He needs to leave the country and leave the country to us so he can live. Haiti is still recovering from Hurricane Matthew, which struck in 2016. Almost 40,000 people remain in makeshift camps after an earthquake killed more than 200,000 people 8 years ago, and thousands of others have died from a years long cholera outbreak. I hate to hear this. All right, Mike, what about this article stood out to you? And okay, why do they have Haiti under Latin America?
because it falls into Latin America.
Okay,
The Caribbean and Latin America are basically one unified block.
okay, all right. And what about this stood out to you?
Um, I think, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think that somebody in Washington has a strategy to pull the strings of Haitians to see how they would react in time of crisis. So would they rise up and overthrow their government? What would it take to destabilize the country as it stands? Because I think we talked about this before, but Haiti actually has a lower crime rate than, let's say, the equivalent of an African American community like Chicago or New York.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
Dollar Will says that. Yeah.
right, so pulling the strings on Haitians to see how they would react, and to any financial or economic instability, is a way to see what would it take to go in there and militarily assert themselves. And I'm speaking in reference to the United Nations, not the United Nations, but the United States.
So you're saying this could be this recent protest could be someone creating a situation in Haiti where America will have to go in and militarize.
It gives them justification, right? So if you can't,
Hmm.
if there's like some allegedly human rights violations, then United States can say, well, that's our backyard, and we have to make sure that people's rights are being respected, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, the whole PR spiel.
Hmm.
But in reality, the United States has never really cared about the human rights of melanated people. So, what other better way for them to justify getting in there? Now, Venezuela and Haiti have a relationship of past years, especially under Chavez, where Haitians have been allowed access to Venezuelan institutions to actually get an education or get proper healthcare treatment, especially after the earthquake. So there has been some talks back and forth between Venezuela and Haiti, especially for mining of resources, because Haiti has a lot of oil, gas, and gold, as well as iridium.
Hmm. Okay, now
So if you
go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was saying if you make the country unstable, then it's gonna be hard for anybody to do business there.
All right. I don't care what nobody says. When people say, "Oh, they're not like us," even though they're black like us, they're not like us. I don't believe in that. They are doing the exact same thing black people do in America. When something goes wrong, black people want to march, protest, and tear up stuff. They're doing the exact same thing, and I'm thinking, okay, what does this do? What? Look at this. They're tearing up businesses. I don't know if these businesses are owned by Haitians or not, but they're tearing up businesses. They're destroying property in your own country. What does that do?
Those are American and French businesses. Those are European businesses down here.
Okay, all right.
So what they're doing is they're tearing up, uh, uh, um, the properties of those foreign investments that have largely been sucking the Haitians out of their resources. So that's why if you notice that the United States put out a declaration for any Americans, quote unquote, which is of pale skin preference, to avoid being inside Haiti or traveling to Haiti because of the instability. And now the embassy has been under attack as well. So that's why I said earlier this gives the United States justification to go in there and assert themselves, because they have the largest embassy in the West inside Haiti. It's like the White House.
The largest embassy in the West is belongs to America's embassy in Haiti.
Correct.
That's in our Port-au-Prince.
Correct.
See, this is why having um, like a strategic think tank, a strategic group of people is beneficial, because you can look and say, well, no, this came out of nowhere. Why would they even raise prices when to support countries? Does it make sense? Let's think about, let's think more into this. Why, ask more whys, and see why this is being done. Instead of, okay, reacting off something that that happens, and all of a sudden you got this tear up. This is just this is why having a think tank is
Mhm.
extremely beneficial. Mm, you can strategize. Right.
Yeah, and it's something that Black people could have done, back in the 80s, when Haiti was under dictatorship. They could have went in there, um, and asserted themselves and actually put down the dictatorship, for what it was. It only took 80 Haitian terrorists to, actually bring down the Haitian government back in 2003, 2004. So you have in a country that has about 10 million Black people in it, and it only took 80 terrorists to bring it down. I mean, how strong is your military then? How strong is your defenses then?
Not strong.
Right, and there's a whole lot of things that can be done, inside Haiti. I mean, they're so rich with resources. They're a perfect hub for cryptos.
Hmm. And that could be, man. I hate to hear this about Haiti, and that Haiti can be like the hub for anybody black want to get in on crypto. That could be the hub. It's hot. It's nice, man. It's a beautiful country for one. Oh, I just hate to hear this about Haiti.
Yeah, I have a lot of Haitian friends, so it's like, you know, they constantly send goods down there, vehicles, Range Rovers, um, Land Cruisers, things like that, down to Haiti, because they always have relatives down there, and they have, property down there, houses and things like that. Um, and that's where Black people can, test their innovations at, such as solar energy, wind power, um, cryptos, um, new internet alternatives for 4G and 5G, Wi-Fi, you know, um, smartphones and tablets and things like that. There's just so many great opportunities. Haiti is the Africa of the West,
Yes, yes,
for the lack of a better description.
yes, I agree with that, and that's not a bad thing. That's like that's a good thing for black people. Of course, depending on how you look at it, but yes, yes, it is. It's the closest thing to Africa for black people in the West outside of directly going to Africa. And that's why I hate to hear stuff like about this, like this with Haiti. The hurricanes, the earth devastating earthquake. I heard stories about that. Oh, good. And a low crime rate. Oh my God, it's like okay, you got a low crime rate and in a poor country, which means crime isn't not the first. Black people. This shows black people is not crime thoughtful. No,
It's
go
not
ahead.
pathological,
Right, right,
and it's not proportionate to poverty. So Tariq Nasheed was in Zimbabwe this year, and he said the same thing about Zimbabwe, that he felt comfortable over there. He said when he was in New York and things like that, he's constantly looking over his back, and he's on edge. But when he was over there, he said he felt comfortable. He said you didn't even
right,
have to like worry about somebody trying to rob you or anything like that because the crime rate is low. So if Zimbabwe is like Haiti, and Haiti is uh, and Haiti's a poorer country than Zimbabwe, but the point of the matter is that if they have similar characteristics, then what does that tell you about the environment? Um, that you know there is nothing to really fear. So on other platforms, people talk about, oh man, you shouldn't. Black people should be trying to build up America and this and that. Why not build up places where you have numbers?
right, right. Where you feel more comfortable.
Hmm.
That's like human. And I don't know, people say, "Oh, racist social construct, strong construct, okay, whatever." That's like racial
Hmm.
intuition. That's what people
Hmm.
do. And man, the blockchain technology would be do wonders for land. Let people know who owns what, so you can know, okay, what can I buy, where's this at, where's that at. Oh my God, like you said, it's the testing ground for Black people, in terms of testing technology.
If I knew how to speak Creole 100%, then I would already be down there. I only know a few words in Creole and that's it. But I can't hold a conversation, so that's what keeps me from going down there. But I have enough Haitian lady friends who will be willing to go down there with me if I need to go down there. So
And oh my, I saw something which said, I know you mentioned that French is a dying language, and I saw a documentary. I don't think well, I saw something on YouTube which said a lot of Haitians are starting to learn English. How English is starting to become a more a language that's more is talked by a lot of people in Haiti. And now I'm thinking about something else. What's going on in Cameroon with between the French speaking Africans and the English speaking Africans. They going to war. I hope let's say Haiti overcomes this little you know oil thing. I hope that doesn't language doesn't trigger another outbreak in Haiti. It's so trivial. It's like it's not even your language. Why are you killing people? That's oh my God.
it's coons all over the world.
Oh my God, man. Shit, goodness gracious, dude. Really? You gonna kill? You know what? Let's get to the next topic. Oh my. Anybody here? No. Deep breaths. All right. This is from Press TV. Arab states intel heads, Mossad chief holds secret meeting report, and this is tripped out. This is crazy right here. This article. Spy chiefs of Israel and Arab and regional Arab countries have reportedly attended a secret summit hosted by the U.S. President's senior advisor in Washington, moves to conduct a controversial peace plan on the Israel or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict without the consent of the Palestinian side. God damn. Oh my God. French news outlet Intelligence Online reported Thursday that the intelligence heads of Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, as well as Mossad chief Yossi Cohen took part in the clandestine conference initiated by U.S. President Donald Trump's senior advisor and son-in-law Jared Kushner and U.S. envoy to the Middle East Jason Greenblatt, who were on a regional tour earlier this month. The report said Palestinian intelligence chief Majed Faraj also joined the meeting. However, according to the Palestinian Ma'an news agency, the Palestinian Authority, or PA, has denied having sent its representative to the meeting. Intelligence Online claimed the U.S. views Faraj as an option to replace Palestinian Authority's president Mahmoud Abbas. So just by saying that, we already know what this Majah Faraj is on. Oh my God, this is really. The report did not say where or when the summit took place, but Israel's Arutz Sheveh radio station said it has been held 10 days ago. Faraj has reportedly met with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo 2 months ago for a conversation that dealt mainly with the situation of the Palestinian Authority on the day after Abbas leaves office. Egypt and Jordan are the countries with official relations with Israel. Egypt and Jordan. Okay. Saudi Arabia does not officially recognize Israel and has no formal ties with the regime. But under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Riyadh has stepped up its public overtures towards Israel, which are viewed as an attempt to prepare public opinion at home and elsewhere for potential normal relations with Israel. The Saudi regime has long been seeking to depict itself as an advocate of the Palestinian cause, but reports over the past month suggest that the kingdom is helping the U.S. behind the scenes to impose the hugely pro Israel peace plan. Oh my God. Did I? Okay. Israel lays claim to the whole Jerusalem outquids, but the international community views the city's eastern sector as an occupied territory, and Palestinians consider it as the capital of their future state. The excuse me, the contentious move led Abbas to formally declare the Palestinians would no longer accept the U.S. as a mediator to resolve the conflict because Washington was completely biased towards Tel Aviv. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu recently described Israel's relations with the Arab world to be at their best ever. On June 22nd, Israel's Mariv newspaper reported that Saudi Crown Prince and Netanyahu had held secret meetings in Amman. Back in April, Israel's Prime Minister for Military Affairs joined Eric Ben Haim, Israel's Ministry for Military Affairs, joined Eric Ben Haim, a former officer with the Mossad spy agency, as Tel Aviv's envoy to the Arab world. Okay, so they held a prince to talk. Well, they held a I think I started. Okay, they held a meeting to discuss Saudi Arabia and the minister, senior advisor, and son-in-law, uh, Jared Kushner, and Saudi Arabia, and I think said Jordan and Egypt held a secret meeting to talk about how they're going to, the state of Palestine and how they're going to resolve it. I guess without any Palestinians being there. Really? What? Oh my God. Go ahead, man. Just explain to me why. Okay, I'm not even going to ask why they would do this because they can. Obviously, it doesn't make sense. This is crazy.
Actually, this is a part of the process that I was referring to maybe a month or so back that Trump worked out a deal that would actually allow um, Egypt to take over the Gaza Strip and Jordan to take over the East Jerusalem, and then leaving the Palestinians to the mercy of those two Arab states while Israel gobbles up the rest of the territory to themselves.
Okay. Let me let me bring up the map. Is 'cause I Why you say that? I want to see it. What? What the? Okay, you know what? I just saw something right here on Draymond Green's Friends of the IDF trip to Israel. I'm not even gonna. When you say coons everywhere, man, god dang. Okay, all right. Now, what you just said, can you please repeat that again? While I look at the map. Well, I got the map up. People can see.
Trump, Kushner, and Netanyahu worked out a deal to split up um, the Palestinian state. So what's left of the Palestinian state, Gaza will go to Egypt, and East Jerusalem will go to East Jerusalem will go to Jordan.
So that whole chunk of land over here will be absorbed by Jordan, which is right here. And then you got the Gaza Strip, which Egypt will give for themselves per this meeting.
That's correct. So um, I think this meeting may be in reference to um, some of the overtures that they may have in place. I'm not privy of those details, but um, it's more about working out the logistics aspect of it. How are you going to bring in energy? How are you going to supply water, institutions, and things of that nature? I think that's all they're working out right now. And then after that, it would just be a done deal. Who's going to recognize it? I don't know. On the international level, a lot of people don't recognize Israel 100% because the borders of Israel keeps changing because Israel keeps gobbling up all the land, and they're illegally occupying the Golan Heights over in Syria. So that and as well as southern Lebanon. So um, this is a very fragile situation for the Palestinians as well as Israel, because if Israel can't make up its mind on where its borders are, then they can't be defined as a state. If the Palestinians don't have a right to return to their home, then they cannot be considered a state either, because they cannot surrender to Israel, because then they lose their identity. So then they don't have any leverage.
Mm-hmm. Man, they got ruthless with this. Like, man, they shit.
The Zionists in Israel are doing the same thing to Palestine that um, the Europeans did to the Native Americans, taking the land,
Okay.
carving it up for themselves, and renaming it, and institutionalizing it, as well as trying to institutionalize the indigenous population. So in this regard, that will be the Palestinians, and in reference to America, then that will be the Native American Indians, as well as the Native American blacks that were there long before the Europeans got there.
Now who's to say? Okay, this goes through, and Jordan get this large piece of land that's really highly occupied by Israelis already. They've been setting up settlements in there with roads. They've been building roads and colleges and schools in there already in the Palestinian territory. And who's to say that? Okay, let's say this goes through. Who's to say that will Israel will not continue to try to push into this newly Jordan area and this newly Egypt area? No, who's to say? Because
Because
they are.
they wouldn't need to. They wouldn't need to. I mean, if they haven't done so at this point, then there wouldn't be no need to do it later on after writing the deal on paper, right? It's just wouldn't be. It's a political victory for them as they see it, right? Because then they get the global recognition that they were looking for, even though most people are not going to agree with it. And keep in mind that those places that were occupied before were actually Palestine was actually a part of Transjordan, prior to Israel becoming a state. So if you go to an older map, you'll see how Palestine was actually set up.
Yeah. Like, what do you say? Like from the 1950s?
No, the 1950s was the emergence of Israel, but if you go back to like the 1920s, 30s, and maybe the early 40s, you'll see that there's a map that references what Palestine was connected to. It was actually connected to Transjordan. So that's why there's this. And if you look at Jordan today, Jordan's population, one third, if not more, of its population is made up of Palestinians.
Okay, say something like this. This is Mandate for Palestine. I don't know what year this is. Okay, this is Mandate for Palestine, April 24th, 1920. So something like this.
I don't know what that map. I can't see what anything with that on that map. But if you
Okay.
look at the other map with the three slices of or three partitions of yeah, that one right there, that tells you what Palestine was prior to prior to Israel becoming a state.
God, this is from 19. Okay, there's one to the left, 1920, 1948. Mainly Palestine with a lot of little Jewish settlements throughout. Then in 1947, uh, this when the Jewish state came about. Then it just exploded. Then it okay, I see what they're doing right here. Then from 1949 to 1967, it's just a flippening, you know. Then from uh is from since 1967, Israel in occupied territory.
Right.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I can't wait to see what happens. You know, make sure anybody okay. All right. This is from Press TV again. Boris Johnson resigns in protest of May's Brexit plan. Boris Johnson has resigned as British Foreign Secretary, becoming the third minister in 24 hours to quit the government rather than back Prime Minister Theresa May's strategy for Brexit. This afternoon, the Prime Minister accepted the resignation of Boris Johnson as Foreign Secretary, May's Downing Street office said in a statement on Monday, hours after Brexit Minister David Davis stepped down. His replacement will be announced shortly. The Prime Minister thanks Boris for his work, the statement said. In private, Johnson had reportedly criticized May's plan for maintaining strong economic ties to the European Union, even after an official exit from the bloc. Since the cabinet approved the plan on Friday, however, Johnson had refrained from public comment. The top diplomat was expected to co host a summit on the Western Balkans in London on Monday, but failed to show up. As the public face of the Leave campaign, Johnson's resignation will deepen the sense of crisis around the prime minister and increase the chances that she could face a vote of no confidence. Shortly after the departure, May addressed Parliament about her new Brexit plan, saying she did not agree with Johnson and Davis about the best way to honor the result of the 2016 referendum. We do not agree about the best way of delivering our shared commitment to honoring the result of the referendum, May said. May and EU leaders have been reluctant to address the possibility that the UK and the bloc might fail to react to reach a deal on Brexit. Read that again. May and EU leaders have been reluctant to address the possibility that the UK and the bloc might fail to reach a deal on Brexit. What we are proposing is challenging for the EU. It requires them to think again, to look beyond the positions they have taken so far and agree a new deal and fair balance of rights and obligations, she told Parliament. Failure to reach a deal could imperil the EU's budget. as well as the rights of EU citizens living in the UK. Opposition politicians were quick to capitalize on May's trouble. Labour leader, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn Premier uh, accused the Premier of being capable of negotiating a Brexit deal with the EU, given the deep division within her own Conservative Party. Corbyn said Johnson and Davis had left a sinking ship, shattering the illusion of unity initially surrounding the Prime Minister's Brexit plan. The Shaquare's promise took 2 years to reach and 2 days to unravel, he said. We have a crisis in government. It is clear this government cannot secure a good deal for Britain. All right, so this Brexit is getting a little messy. They have disagreements on how it should be conducted. Like I said, if it's not conducted right, it has a very adverse effect on the EU, and we all know, the UK is a big economic powerhouse in the EU right now, in the European Union right now. And as they leave, of course, it'll leave some sort of instability in the EU because they have a big player that's gonna be leaving, and have two, no, three ministers in the last 24 hours to quit government. So this Theresa May's her plan must not be as fluid as others may think. What are your thoughts on this?
So this whole Brexit thing is a hot potato for for anybody, and for Theresa May especially, but for anybody else and who's running for office. So for Boris Johnson, for the Conservative Party, he couldn't get the full backing of it, as well as Theresa May was in the way of this, and whoever succeeds him will have to force the hand of Theresa May, and Theresa May was not really voted in. She was appointed because David Cameron left because of the Brexit deal, because of the Brexit vote, the initial vote that he had in mind that it was to remain within the EU. And what happened was they had a snap election or a snap vote by the people, and they all voted to leave the EU, which is how you got Brexit in the first place. So whoever takes on this whole Brexit thing is going to have their work cut out for them, as well as it could actually boost your credibility. So Jeremy Corbyn is actually like the Bernie Sanders of the UK.
Okay. And he is like the article said, he's the opposition he's the opposition that taking this time to say, hey, they don't have their stuff together. Look what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. So he's creating a PR, somewhat a PR nightmare for these people.
Right, because Brexit is a wild card for anybody who's trying to get into to the prime minister's role.
And if you can navigate them waters well, then man, you you in a good position.
Well, if they keep delaying it, then it's going to be harder for them to get out, right? So the original plan was 2019, but now there's talks of it being 2022, 2025. At that point, you're not really trying to get out. You're just straggling along. You're kicking the can down the road to the point where the can is gonna hit the wall. Nobody else is gonna be able to kick it down the road. And we have somebody like Jeremy Corbyn who could actually recoup from Boris Johnson's resigning from the Conservative Party, as well as Nigel. Nigel from UKIP, which is the United Kingdom Independence Party, which is like the Tea Party of the UK. it could really spark those guys up. It could really spark a lot of nationalism or nationalists up in the UK. And right now, Jeremy Corbyn is the favor, which is what they're trying to prevent from happening. They don't want Jeremy Corbyn as prime minister, just like they don't want Bernie Sanders as a president of the United States. They're actually friends.
Now, okay, if he becomes a prime minister, will because I'm trying to put this, I'm trying to get a hold on this idea. If he becomes a prime minister, what will that do?
It will make the UK a more a more very left leaning socialist society that maybe a lot of the conservatives don't want.
Okay. Now, what will that do for Brexit?
It would basically at this point it would actually disconnect themselves or disjoin themselves from the hip of the European Union, where the UK doesn't have any real veto power inside the EU. The EU is an unelected body, so it doesn't really benefit them to actually be in the EU outside of economic benefits. And if economic benefits is going to be the only case, then let's just, if you're thinking from the UK's perspective, it's more about, well, let's just create control mechanisms as well as policies that would allow us to interact with the EU without actually being in the EU. This is similar to
Right.
how uh,
Sweden.
Sweden reacts
Mhm.
to the EU
Yeah, they
without being.
right. They got out of it, but still benefit from the economics. Now, wasn't Germany talking about getting out the EU? Well, or okay, was Germany talking about getting out the EU, or did they say, okay, hey, if UK leave, then we really don't have a reason to stay here either?
Germany is actually the beating heart of the EU. Without Germany, you don't have an EU,
Oh man.
because
Okay, so
there's a lot of
go ahead.
economical development happening within Germany. Germany has always been a very um, forward-thinking state within Europe. So they're always one step ahead of everybody else. So that's why they're so successful, and everybody else really isn't.
Okay, so even if the UK, let's say UK leaves the EU in 2019, 2020, some in some years that's really that's not kicking the can down the road. Okay, so UK leaves within the next 2 years. Say within the next 2 years, UK leaves. That really doesn't say anything to Germany because if Germany leaves, regardless of whoever else leaves, then the whole EU is kind of on life support.
Right. The EU has always been on life support. They always have to rely on the major powers such as France and Germany in order to survive. And that's something I think we brought up last week with Dollar Will, that it doesn't matter about Greece or Portugal and the rest of these countries trying to go back to their original currency, because they're tied in with the euro. They don't have any choice. They're basically being colonized by the European Union, which is exactly what the European Union is. It's a colonial institution. It gobbles up all of the states within the European framework, and it puts them under one currency, as well as forces them to kiss the ring of the unelected powers that are within the European Council itself. If you notice, most flags that have flown outside of European institutions, whether it's Italy or Spain or whatever, which state is within the EU, they have to have that blue and gold
Mhm.
flag right next to it. That's mandatory.
Okay. Well, we're gonna keep up with this one also. This is one of our earlier topics when we first started the show, so we're gonna keep you all up to date on this one. All right, let's move on. This one comes from almasad.news.com. Syrian Army, it's from July 9th, by Zen Adra. Syrian Army secures border with Jordan, recaptures more outposts. Damascus, having taken over several towns in northwest of Daraa city earlier today, the Syrian army continues to recapture garrison posts along the borders with Jordan in order to secure and eventually completely seal the frontiers. According to a military source, the government troops have recaptured up to 27 border outposts, point 62 until point 63, 36, all located to the west of the recently liberated Nasib border crossing. Sealing off the borders will prevent militants and supplies influx into the Syrian territories, as well as foil all attempts made by rebels to the neighboring Jordan, escape to neighboring Jordan. The government forces have shifted focus to the western countryside of Daraa with the ultimate objective to expel jihadi groups all the way to the occupied Golan Heights. Okay, so they have what's this? Well, Syria has reinforced the border with Jordan by taking posts that was along the Syrian Jordan um, border, and it also said that prevents as sealing the border would prevent militants and supplies influx into the Syrian territories, as well as foil all attempts made by rebels to escape to neighboring Jordan. So they can't escape to Jordan, so they'll have to go to somewhere else. And per the article, it said that uh, maybe to the Golan Heights. All right. Am I wrong in that, or any other points about this article?
No, this is the last stronghold for the militants or the terrorists for that matter. United States has under Trump has already stated that they're not going to help those guys in the South. So those guys are on their own. They have surrendered. They have shown the Syrian military has shown that they captured a lot of these American and French made weapons or NATO built weapons, anti tank guided missiles, mortars, 60 and 80 millimeter mortars, small arms such as M4 rifles and things of that nature. Not enough to actually keep the Syrian military from coming in, because the Syrian military have pretty much bombarded the area with all types of howitzers and uh, grad missiles, guided and unguided, and the Russians had already came in from the air and completely bombed the crap out of it. So
So this is the last straw for them.
they pushed them um, into the Golan Heights at this point.
And so okay, yeah, okay. So after Dara, they go to the Golden Heights. At the Golden Heights, mm, let's say they defeated. That's it. Or
Not necessarily. So they could still put up a small arms fight on the ground, but they're not actually going to create an effective change. I'm not sure what I guess their point of view is we rather die than to surrender to the Syrian Arab military. But the Syrian military, the Syrian government, I should say, actually offered a deal to allow them to get on buses to travel out, so that they would
mm,
not, so that they wouldn't have to go in there and kill them, to just clear out the soldiers or the terrorists for who they really were. And they don't necessarily have to do that. They was actually just being generous by allowing them to leave.
leave. Yeah, but they say they rather die. Oh, okay. Well, all right. So
Well, they abandoned the weapons, so that means that they they weren't really 100% looking for a fight. I guess. I guess they knew they couldn't win. Why bother fighting if you can actually save yourself?
Okay, so now that they just left the Dara posts, we already established that they're going to be heading to the Golan Heights, right?
My understanding is that they flushed the Syrian Arab army had flushed them into the Golan Heights. Now,
Okay.
uh, Israel is warning the Syrian military that they have to keep their distance out of the Golan Heights, but that's BS. I mean, the Golan Heights belongs to them. It doesn't matter what kind of United Nations security guarantors that they have, saying that the Syrian government can only keep their military so many kilometers away from where Israel's military is occupied in the Golan Heights. It doesn't matter at this point. If there's terrorists inside the Golan Heights within Syrian territory, then those terrorists would either have to leave on their own or be removed. And if they cross over into Israel and Israel basically doesn't kill them, then we know who they work for.
Mm-hmm. 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 I like that. Well, that thought process is strategy. Okay. So we'll see. We'll hear more about this within the next couple of weeks, especially the next month. All right. Let's get to our next one. This I read this one earlier. Oh my god. Ugh. FoxNews.com. The U.S.-China trade war has begun. A shooting war could be next. Let me see if anyone. Okay, nope. All right. This is by Harry J. Kazianis. Okay. Well, this is an opinion. Okay, well, excuse me. A trade war broke out Friday between the U.S. and China, with the U.S. imposed tariffs on 34 billion in Chinese products, and China slapped tariffs on an equal amount of U.S. products. President Trump has said that President Trump has said that would prompt the U.S. to impose up to 500 billion in Chinese products. But things could get worse. The deterioration of U.S.-China relations could escalate and turn into a shooting war between the two nuclear-armed superpowers. In the worst-case scenario, this could result in massive casualties on both sides that will even lead to nuclear war. Some will, some will call such a statement pure hype, as I wish it was. But the facts lead us to a dark place when it comes to our relationship with China, which is becoming less of a partnership and more like a fight between mortal enemies looking to gain any advantage they can over the other. We are all rightly concerned over North Korea's nuclear weapons, Iran's penchant for backing terror, and a rogue Russia that can't seem to stop causing trouble all over the world. But these problems, oh my God, I can't, you know what? All, but these problems are nothing when compared to China, when compared to the China challenge. No other nation is able to challenge American power on the world stage in the coming years. Just look over the current state of affairs in the U.S. China relationship. We see trade and military standoffs, territorial disputes, and allies and partners of both nations squaring. But before we stare a war with China in the eyes, let's consider the budding trade battle between Washington and Beijing. The Trump administration new duties on 34 billion and on Chinese The Trump administration new duties on 34 billion in on Chinese goods amount to a 25% tariff. The duties impact such items as X-ray machines, water boilers, airplane tires, and industrial parts. China slapped its tariffs on 34 billion worth of U.S. products such as soybeans, electric cars, pork, and other products. But the Trump administration is not ready to back down, and in fact seems itching for a scrap. A senior Trump administration official told me Friday, "We are ready for a trade war. If they want it, we are ready to fight it. They need to remember America will win that so called war hands down. Our market is bigger, our consumers richer. We are the global innovator. All we ask is for an even playing field from the Chinese. If they won't agree to that, then they will have to deal with the consequences." When I asked what those consequences were, the official was quite clear. China will pay a price. We will impose costs on them. They will need to be ready for that. We are. And one thing is quite clear: Washington does hold an advantage in a trade fight. The numbers don't lie. America imports much more from China than China imports from the US. And while the US consumers and businesses will be hurt in a full-blown trade war, China stands to lose out on a big portion of the 462 billion in goods and services America imports from that nation. Considering the fact that the Chinese economy is already slowing down, Chinese President Xi Jinping would be wise to back off. But something bigger is afoot here: a seismic shift in the international affairs that has been dormant. Until now, as I have explained in these very digital pages, the US China relationship was bound to become adversarial as soon as the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. The Soviet threat was the one thing that brought both China and the US together in the 1970s. Beijing saw the confrontation with America coming and was already beginning to modernize its armed forces and recalibrate its military posture to take on the looming challenge from across the Pacific. While China certainly did prepare for what it felt was an inevitable encounter with America, time and circumstances put seems to put any sort of showdown. Beijing's ascension to the World Trade Organization in 2001 meant economic ties would grow between both nations quickly, and geopolitical tensions are not good for business. The September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks also meant Washington was forced to shift its attention from Asia and back into the Middle East for over a decade. A true showdown with China was averted, at least for a while. Unfortunately, it seems the chances of a real clash with China and even a military confrontation are now spiking. With America less involved in the daily squabbles of the Middle East and no longer keen on letting Beijing take us to the cleaners on trade, any number of issues could see these two superpowers exchange blows. For example, China over the last few years have been pushing absurd claims that seek to turn the waters around its coast into its own sovereign territory. You see how they twisted that? From the East China Sea all the way to the South China Sea, Beijing is determined to ensure that it is the master of the seas and push Washington out the region for good. To support such claims, Beijing has made some key investments in its military to win a war with America. The centerpiece of this is a missile arsenal that is second to none, and is of such size that U.S. missile defenses will be overwhelmed many times over. Firing from shore, China will hope to destroy most of America's bases around the region, as well as sink any warships as far out as Guam. The worst part of all, thanks to treaty commitments with Russia, is that Washington is unable to counter Beijing's missile weaponry on land. And from there, it gets even worse. Backed by a massive militia that is nearly impossible to match, a growing navy armed with aircraft carriers, and an air force that is producing fighter planes that strangely look like our very own stealth aircraft because China stole the technology. Beijing's claims in Asia are only growing more outrageous. At one point a few years ago, it seemed China was even making veiled claims to Okinawa, a clear part of Japan territory that is home to a massive U.S. military presence. Such claims have even fostered parody articles saying that China has claimed most of the Pacific and Hawaii, almost fooling an entire conference at Yale University a few years ago. History tells us that nations with divergent interests and competing geopolitical goals with enough proximity tend to clash. In fact, Harvard professor Graham Allison reminds us, in 12 out of 16 cases, studies where a rising power competed with an established power, think China versus America, war was the result. Therefore, when talk of a trade war with China heats up, I think of a very different type of war, and you should too. All right. Now, what about this? What about this article stood out to you?
The fact that this is going to come down to guns. I mean, there's
Yeah.
only so much that China's going to take, especially the recent things that Donald Trump has done this morning by slapping another $200 billion in tariffs on China. That, this plus the Spratly Islands, uh, it's just a kettle, it's just a powder keg right in the burst. So um, if if the United States thinks they can take on China in their own backyard, in which they probably could. They have, a lot of resources to go around. The problem is, what what do you know? What do you think China's reaction is going to be? If you're the United States, you think you can go in there and bomb Beijing and Shanghai and these other industrialized areas and force China to the table? I don't think so. I think that Russia will get involved. I think that um, even the Philippines may get involved by not allowing U.S. aircraft to fly over its airspace. Something as simple as that. They don't have to actually pick up a gun. They can just basically close off the airspace.
Yeah. What about the two Koreas? If things jump off.
Well, if things jump off, I mean, then it doesn't give the North Koreans any reassurance that that U.S. is going to be committed to the to the nuclear deal. Um, and South Korea doesn't want to actually get into a fight with China,
Mm.
so it kind of takes a lot of the cards off the table for the United States.
Well, as we all at one point in time in a lot of these hangouts, we all say, if business don't get done, next thing is boots on the ground.
Yeah, but whose ground is the real question, right? I
Mm.
mean, you're not going to see Chinese boots inside America anytime soon, but you're not going to see American boots inside China mainland. It's just not going to happen. They won't make it that far into the territory before being knocked down.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Because everything almost industrialized. They not. China has like the article say, and you say that China got warships, airplane, jets. They got Russia, to back them up. It's a situation, man. Now, this next article from atimes.com, it states why they think America is putting these tariffs on China. The This is from atimes.com. The technological arms war over made in China 2025. A move to link up with one of the world's most influential chip companies illustrates the scope of Beijing's ambitious and ambitions and Washington's concerns. Advanced RISC machines hardly rolls off the tongue. Known as ARM Holdings to the business fraternity, it is not exactly a household name in Scunthorpe, Seattle, or Shanghai. Yet this high-tech research and development company could end up being crucial to President Xi Jinping's ambitious Made in China 2025 project, which aims to turn the world's second largest economy into a technological powerhouse. ARM Holdings doesn't build processors per se. Jason Perlow, a technical architect consultant at Dimension Data, told ZDNet, a business technology news website published by CBS Interactive and Tech Republic. It creates reference designs or architectures which are essentially the basic blueprints or the DNA of how semiconductors work, he added. The firm then licenses those basic designs to other companies, which in turn uses them in their own chips. From humble beginnings amid the dreaming spires of the university city of Cambridge in England, ARM has become a hothouse of innovation since the 1990s and is part of what the United Kingdom calls Silicon Fen, a typically British play on Silicon Valley. Now part of Masayoshi Son's sprawling SoftBank Group after a US $32 billion take a 32 billion dollar takeover in 2016. The semiconductor designer's core customers are Apple, Samsung, and Qualcomm, who are licensed to incorporate their chip designs. Its influence is immense. High Tech Hub. In April, ARM set a joint venture in Shenzhen's High Tech Hub. Since then, plans have emerged that the company is planning to cede control to a Chinese consortium holding Hopeful Arm Innovation Fund, which is also known as How On Innovation Fund, according to China's Ministry of Science and Technology. Other key investors are believed to be Baidu, which is China's answer to Google, Bank of China Group, investment and venture capital firm Sequoia, the Nikkei Asia Review reported 2 weeks ago. If the deal goes through, the new entity will be known as ARM Mini China, obviously sharing future technology by boosting funding for future research and development in the microchip field will become a priority. Money will be no object. It's hard to predict how long it will take for China to catch up with others or successfully develop its own core technologies. But for traditional chip sectors, the time will be longer. Ging Bao, the Vice Secretary General of the inappropriately named China Solid State Lightning Alliance, a technology research and investment firm in Beijing, said, as it stands, about 90% of the world's mobile devices use the ARM chip blueprint. The group's Chinese clients include Huawei's semiconductor division, HiSilicon Technologies, Xiaomi, and Fuzhou Rockchip Electronics under a royalty scheme. But it is the R&D work conducted by roughly 250 employees in Shenzhen, which is the perfect fit for the Made in China program. It is in its scale, the project is breathtaking. Rolled out in 2015, 4 years after Germany Industry 4.0 initiative was launched at the Hanover Fair. The policy encompasses an array of sectors, from chips, computers, and the cloud to smart cars to smart cookers. Renewables, railways, and robotics are other vital areas earmarked along with the Internet of Things and interconnected smart technology linked through artificial intelligence or AI for the pharmaceutical industry. That is the big one, that paragraph. Yet the sheer depth of the scheme has triggered a technological arms race, with US President Donald Trump insisting that China's state subsidies for high tech industries must be curtailed as trade talks resume in Washington this week. That's a telling paragraph. The current trade war between the United States and China is not about trade. Yukon Huang, a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment and author of Cracking the China Conundrum, Why Conventional Economic Wisdom is Wrong, wrote in an opinion piece for Sykes, Dominant Economic Power. This war is about protecting the technological edge that has made the United States the world's dominant economic power. The former World Bank director for China added on the Beijing-based media website. Running alongside the trade spat has been the ZTE saga. The Shenzhen telecom giant has been left crippled after being banned for 70 years from buying US-made components such as semiconductors, wrecking its supply chain. The stellar company in China's tech firmament, ZTE was ruled to have violated a sanctions settlement involving illegal exports to Iran and North Korea by the U.S. Commerce Department. Beijing's take, though, has been quite different, pointing out that this was a direct assault on its cutting edge tech sector and the coveted Made in China policy. We have good reasons to question the legality and legitimacy of many actions taken by the U.S. on the grounds of national security, like its plan to impose high tariffs on many industries of Made in China 2025. Hua Chunying, a spokeswoman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, told a media briefing last month. Clearly, they are targeting something else. Still, the same could be said of the move to snap up arms joint venture and the state-sponsored move to dominate tomorrow's technology technology today. Phew, that was a good article, but it was two paragraphs in here that stood out the most, and it was where was it? I can't remember why I read it. Oh, here it goes. Renewables, railways, and robotics are other vital areas earmarked, along with the Internet of Things, the interconnected smart technology linked throughout artificial intelligence or AI for the pharmaceutical industry. Then the very next paragraph says, yet the sheer depth of the scheme has triggered a technological arms race, with U.S. President Donald Trump insisting that China's state subsidies for high-tech industries must be curtailed as trade talks resume in Washington this week. So, what this article is insisting, what it is pointing, is trying to point out that the trade, the tariffs are not about a unfavorable trade relationship, which the U.S. is not getting, is not benefiting from. It's not about that. It's trying to stunt China's technological growth. That is why the tariffs have been put on Chinese imports per this article. What do you think about this article, Mike?
Well, first, I want to acknowledge Intergravity and
Yeah.
Complex Design has joined.
What's going on, people?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good evening. So you all heard the article. So what now, Mike? What do you think about the article?
Well, I think the United States isn't in an unfair position because they're constantly, American companies are actually giving up more than what they're gaining. They're gaining a foothold inside into China mainland, but the problem is that intellectual property has to be transferred over as part of the agreement at some point. You've seen this now with AMD and their new chips, the Epic chips that just came out, server-based chips and ultra low power based chips that power basic desktop computers and servers. That development has largely been part of Chinese, the transfer to the Chinese
Mhm.
in terms of intellectual property. And when China does business here, they don't transfer any of their technology or their intellectual property here. Very rarely do they do.
No.
So anywhere else in the world, they very rarely do they do. Now in Africa, they may set up infrastructure development, but that's that's a part of the deal that they want in order to get resources out. Whereas a company, an American company or a Western company coming into China and having to do business, then what happens is they have to give up something, some of their sovereign technology to China, and that's not fair. That helps China grow as a nation state, but it doesn't help the other party.
So then why do these companies?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ulysses.
No. Go ahead, Noah. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask Mike. So why do these companies keep doing it? Because every time they do it, later on, the Chinese firms, they go back on their word. They take, they end up taking the. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I meant. They keep doing it, but in the long run, it's not really good for them because they take the technology, and then they make knockoffs, and then in some cases, those knockoffs end up buying those American companies. Is it just like a matter of greed?
Well, China has a lot of human capital.
Right, but American companies that come to China, that, for example, there are very few Western companies that do well in China. For the most part, the Chinese competitors just copy them, and then they end up, outperforming them. So should they just forsake China just in general because of these, tactics?
No, because China's a billion body nation state, so they need. Well, you still need that market. It's still a market that has to be tapped. So whether or not you transfer that intellectual property or not doesn't really matter. It's still a market that needs to be. You need to get a foothold in if you're a technology company such as Intel or AMD or Cisco or Nokia for that matter. The problem
that's exactly
is that
my point is that they don't end up getting that foothold. A lot of companies, they came to China, they had to do technology transfer. They ended up failing, and then a competitor, takes their idea and is able to run with it. So a lot of companies are just saying it's too much trouble to either manufacture or do business in China. We're going to go elsewhere.
To a certain extent, that's true. It depends on what the product is and what the technology is. Obviously, if you're Microsoft and you have Microsoft Windows, you can't have the Chinese trying to knock off Windows and trying to rebrand their own Chinese Windows like they tried before. That didn't work out too well for them.
Well, let me pose a question out of left field. What if we're not factoring in the environmental equation? A question that I want to pose to everyone. Have we looked into how many U.S. companies have basically skirted or avoided like pollution laws and stuff like that in China? Right? Do we know the details of the deals that they have, right? Let's just say, for example, if you violate any of the terms of the deal or the arrangement or the agreement or something like that, right? Like, have we considered any of these things? Like, over the last couple of days, what I kind of entertained myself in doing was looking up some of the statistics with regards to companies, U.S.-based companies, multinational companies that basically went into China. What would have gotten them completely shut down here in the United States, but did it there, and completely ran and hightailed it, right, and left China to deal with the environmental impacts of this. So I'm wondering if that part of the equation has ever been taken into consideration.
I don't know.
You want to speak on that, Mike? Okay, I think you might be busy. Okay, what I would say is a lot, and especially companies that are in manufacturing, and then within the manufacturing, especially technology companies, because the processes for making a lot of tech is very polluting, and that's kind of like the draw, the pitch that China gives is that we are able to skirt these environmental laws, so we're able to produce cheaper. So come buy from us or come invest here. So I think it's substantial because the pollution there is extremely bad.
Right, but I would say even even with that type of arrangement, right? I'm almost certain that China just they didn't just say, okay, look, come in here and pollute our water system with mercury, right? I'm pretty sure there were limits, right? And in the event that you exceeded those limits, there were going to be some sort of remediation, some sort of penalty, some sort of, some sort of, repair mechanism, some sort of something. And like I said, I would entertain people to actually Google this. And then
well, they're not going to say
is
it outright, but it's
no,
implied,
actually,
if that makes sense.
Well, no, what I'm saying is actually Google it. There's like lawsuits involved in this type of stuff. You have trade ministers that have spoken with regards to this type of thing. It's an interesting read.
No, but here's the deal: is that it's the same kind of corruption that happens in the United States happens over there too, right? Where there'd be this big factory or this bank, and then they're going to the same restaurants and they're eating lunch or dinner with the regulators. So, so it's kind of like that kind of thing where we're trying to bring capital into the United States. I don't know if I should say this, but I remember one regulator, he basically said, as long as you're getting US dollars into the country, I don't care. This is basically what he said. So that's kind of what it is.
And look, there's been no shortage of billionaire Chinese businessmen who have then had to face the law in China. One case that stands out to me is the guy who I don't know. I'm not sure if he's still the CEO of Biden or no. I'm sorry, not Biden. Faraday Future, the electric car company.
What is he facing?
Oh, dude, like that dude like has like lawsuits like up the wazoo about investors being defrauded in mainland China.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. For the most part, with those kind of cases, in that case, it's a little bit different because I'm sure he defrauded a lot of very rich, powerful, and connected people.
Okay.
But in terms of just general corruption, the only people who get locked up for corruption are people who are enemies of particular people.
Okay.
The corruption probe is a political purge. It's not necessarily because they did the corruption. Everyone is doing it.
Corruption has a different definition in China.
Well, when everyone's on the take, yeah, I guess, right?
Okay, no, makes sense. Makes sense.
No, I just mean that kind of in reference to if you heard about it recently, the Xi Jinping anti-corruption campaign. There's a little bit of people actually getting put away for corruption, but for the most part, it's his political enemy, not Hu Jintao, Jiang Zemin, the Jiang Zemin faction of the PRC. He's purging all of them in this quote unquote anti-corruption campaign.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha. No arguments there.
All right. Let's get to our last topic for the night, and we can talk about it. Go to the open mic. This is from the Washington Post. This from June 27 by Anton Tryanovsky. White House, Kremlin agrees. The White House Kremlin agree on time and place for Trump-Putin summit. Moscow, National Security Advisor John Bolton finalized an agreement with the Kremlin here on Wednesday for a summit between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin that Moscow has been pursuing for months. After a marathon of meetings that included Kremlin talks with Putin himself, Bolton said an announcement on the time and place of a Trump-Putin summit will be made simultaneously in Washington and Moscow on Thursday. The summit is expected to take place somewhere outside Russia, while Trump is in Europe in mid-July for previously scheduled visits to Belgium and Britain. The meeting between Trump and Putin will be highly anticipated and closely watched. It will be their first official encounter that does not take place on the sidelines of a broader international gathering. It would garner intense scrutiny because of special counsel Robert S. Mueller III's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election and possible coordination between Moscow and Trump's presidential campaign. And it could overshadow the July meeting of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, raising fresh questions about Trump's commitment to American traditional alliances. Bolton, in a news conference in the Russian capital after his meetings, dismissed those concerns while chiding Trump's domestic critics. A lot of people have said or implied over time that a meeting between President Trump and President Putin will somehow prove some nexus between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin, which is complete nonsense, Bolton said. Trump, he went on, believes that what must guide his conduct of American foreign policies is the pursuit of American national interest, and he judges, correctly in my view, that this bilateral summit between himself and Putin is something that he needs to do and will do regardless of political criticism at home. Bolton's push for engagement with Putin struck a sharp contrast with the longtime hawk's harsh criticism of the Russian president before he took over as Trump's national security advisor in April. Last year, he described Russian interference in the 2016 election as a true act of war and concluded, negotiate with Russia at your own peril. On Wednesday, however, Bolton told Putin at the outset of their meeting he hoped Russia and the United States could find areas where we can agree and make progress together. He quipped that he looked forward to hearing about how you handled the World Cup so successfully, drawing a big smile from the Russian president. Even in earlier days, when our countries had differences, our leaders and their advisors met, Bolton said. I think that was good for both countries, good for stability in the world, and President Trump feels strongly on that subject. Putin warmly greeted Bolton in a grand oval meeting hall at the Kremlin, flanked by statues of Russian czars set before line painted walls. The president opened the meeting by reiterating his frequent contention that U.S. Russian relations are in a poor state in a large part because of the domestic political environment in the United States. Your visit here to Moscow inspires hope that we'll be able to find the view to take. Your visit here to Moscow inspires hope that we will be able to take first steps to restore full-fledged relations between Russia and the United States, Putin said. Russia never sought confrontation, and I hope that today we will be able to talk about what we can do from both sides in order to restore full-fledged relations on the foundation of equality and of respect for each other's interests. The meeting, wow, the meeting also included talks on Iran, Syria, and nuclear arms control, officials said. The discussions very briefly touched on allegations of Russian election interference. Kremlin Foreign Policy aide Yuri Yushakov said. From our side, it was clearly stated that the Russian state did not interfere and does not interfere in domestic political processes in the United States, and most certainly did not interfere in the 2016 election. You could, uh, Yushakov said. Bolton said that Bolton said the issue of election interference will be part of the conversation when Putin and Trump met. Asked about his prior writings on the matter at his conference, Bolton said he would not comment on statements he made before entering his job. Right now, I'm an advisor to President Trump, Bolton said. It's his agenda, and we're pushing. And his agenda that we're pushing or pursuing. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said last week that Trump and Putin will probably meet in the not too distant future after Bolton's visit to Moscow. Russian officials have sought such a meeting for months and have blamed U.S. domestic politics for the difficulty in making it happen. Trump also had pushed for a meeting with Putin despite resistance from the senior political aides and diplomats. The Trump Putin meeting is expected to take place while Trump is in Europe in mid July. He is scheduled to attend the NATO meeting summit July 11th and 12th in Brussels and to visit Britain on July 13th. Earlier Wednesday, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov declined to comment on news reports that a Trump Putin meeting could take place in Vienna or Helsinki. We cannot boast about a wealth of bilateral contacts in our bilateral relationship, Peskov said, describing the purpose of Wednesday's meeting with Bolton. Such contacts are used to change. Such contacts are used to exchange views on the main problems in international affairs. They are rather clear and obvious, but to discuss the sad state of our bilateral relationship. All right, so we all heard the article. Who wants first dibs on this one?
Let's welcome
All right.
Nagone.
What's going on, Nagon? How you doing today?
Good.
What's up? What's up? What's up, fellas? How y'all doing, man? What's up? What's
Good
going on?
evening.
What's up, Ulysses?
Good, man. How are you?
What's good?
What's going on?
Man, what's going on? I don't know where you fellas all up. I see this Trump rush. A lot of people. Somebody sent a hella good.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out a little bit. Could you repeat that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody sent. Was it you, Mike, or someone sent a really good video on what's fake, and then you
Oh,
Dollar
that
Will.
was,
yeah, man,
yeah,
that's
with
really
Cynthia
good shit.
Tony, I thought, yeah,
Breaking down that shit, man, what's actually going on between the Soviet Union or Russia and what's going on with Trump right now. I think all this shit is theater, dude. All this shit is theater.
I only saw a little bit of it. Was it basically saying he's a
it was good.
Manchurian or Siberian? I forget what the term is. Candidate.
No, all to cry. This shit comes down to business. This shit comes down to money.
I think he's a Minnesotan.
Yeah,
It's basically Serbian candidate, a Siberian candidate. Yeah.
This is about money at the end.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's what I kind of said to Ulysses. I said, I think he's been laundering money for Russian oligarchs and the Russian mafia for like 30 years or 40 years now. And this is just
it's not so much laundering
business.
It's not so much laundering money.
And I don't disagree with that.
It's about his properties and it's him about putting together a lot of trying to extend his whatever his empire is to be in that area. You know what I mean? He extended it. He tried to extend it there. And if you're gonna extend it in there, 11 families basically are controlling the Soviet Union. So he's got to deal. He's got to deal with them guys, man. You know what I mean? He had to deal with them. It's just kind of how it is.
Well, keep in mind that Trump doesn't have any credit inside the United States, so he has to get his loans from outside the United States and Asia. So the Chinese and the Russians have been bankrolling him for decades now. He hasn't he hasn't actually paid back any of his creditors. So this is the time that he can actually repay them back through diplomacy. And in this regard, right, and in this regard, he can actually negotiate quite a few things that would be of benefit to, let's say, the Russians itself or the Russian state. If you take into consideration if you take into consideration some of the diplomatic relations, you can think about Crimea, the lifting of sanctions because of Russia taking Crimea during the Ukraine this
Conflict.
uh, yeah during the
Invasion.
during the Ukraine instability. If you think about Syria, some of the policies that America has for Syria, they have to actually negotiate that. And then you think about NATO as a whole, that has to be negotiated. Um, and then you think about North Korea. North Korea is another wild card on the table that the Russians have a vested interest in because they share a border with North Korea.
That's
do
the
you
bottom
guys
line right there.
so do you guys agree with the story that they got compromise on him then, or is these loans the compromise?
Of course, this guy's compromised. Of course, he is. I mean, even Republican senators were saying that this guy was getting paid by, that they knew this guy was. I mean,
Well,
said
so was
but at
Hillary
the end of the
Clinton.
day,
Hillary Clinton was bankrolled by the Russians as well through the Clinton Foundation.
well, you talking about with the Clinton Foundation, all that. It took a whole lot of money, and it's all the same shit. And a lot of people saying they're going to impeach this guy. Well, what are they going to impeach him for when the oligarchs here and the plutarchs here and the oligarchs over there, they're all sitting down. Everybody's making money. Everybody getting paid. They ain't trying to knock out the cap to the cookie jar. This guy's a cookie.
Well,
He's a capital. You open up that the cookie jar is open, man. I mean, these people are making money. It's about money, and that's what we're looking at. And folks,
there's a military industrial complex involved in this, and the Russians, as much as they would like to be a part of the West and hold hands and say kumbaya, there's a lot of money being made off of military arms manufacturing inside Russia, and having peace with the United States or not being at odds with NATO only slows down their profits, and they don't want that. And same thing in America with Lockheed Martin and Boeing and the rest of these.
I was just about to say same thing for us.
Same shit here. Military industrial complex is running syndicate. This is what these guys are doing, and that's why when I sit down and I see these other guys talk about your face ain't on the dollar bill, it's like neither their faces. I mean, everybody's trying to stack as much money as they can. This is what this whole game is about. It's stacking as much money. I mean, we're gonna end up fucking our system over here behind what we're doing. But it's all about these guys making as much money as they can at breakneck levels. Even China, it's the same game. A lot of the Chinese who are, there in China cutting their deals. A lot of the very rich Chinese know a lot of their shit is gonna be problematic. They're trying to stack as much money as they can and move as much money out of China around the rest of the world as they can. That's what they're doing.
They've been doing that for like a decade now. They've been laundering hundreds of millions of dollars out of China.
And moving.
If you want to know why California real estate prices are so high, take a wild guess.
It's them motherfuckers. It's them Chinese.
It's them. Well, because
not only that, they're also investing in. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say that because Nagone brought up, whose face is on the money. Well, we don't know if Nagone's face is on the peso. We're not trading in that.
But you understand. People make these arguments, and it's kind of nonsensical. So what I'm saying is, you have to really look at what's going on out here as to what's real currency trading really all about. And it's not about whose face is on it. It's just who's grabbing as much of it as possible. Where's it going? And it's a whole different kind of stilo. So I mean, when you take a look at the global markets and what's going down, it's a fucking free for all. And
right. And all this, also the Chinese, they're investing a lot in getting citizenships, whether it's Austria, Malta, the Cayman Island countries, not the Cayman Islands, the Cayman, Australia. They're using those citizenships to move around Caribbean as well more freely, and move their money around out of China, because they can't use their Chinese passports to go to very many countries, visa free. Oh, also the U.S. with the golden visa residency program the United States has. If you invest $1 million, or no, it was like $5 million into the U.S., you get a green card, fast tracked.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're setting that kind of situation up in many countries, many nations in Africa. So what's that all about? It's about bring that money in there, bringing that money. That's what that's about. That's what it's about,
And the
man.
truth be told, is that China is just writing zeros and ones inside the computer. They don't actually have that sort of money just sitting on tap because, you know, they're gonna go through an inflation at some point in the next couple of years because they're having a housing bubble that's about to crash this year. They built too many houses. They don't have enough people to actually move into. They have these empty cities with all this infrastructure built. No one's living there. Just a whole host of ghost towns set up that
Man,
it hasn't been
yeah,
purchased, and now you're starting to see a lot of divorces go into play because
yes,
people who are
yes.
married in China get taxed to the hilt. So people are now getting divorced. It's just a bubble ready to happen by the end of the year.
No, they're getting divorced so they can buy more houses because there's a limit on, you know, 2
Yeah.
houses per married family.
So they get divorced to buy
But
4 houses.
So they're
you're right.
they're actually using that as an economic tactic. I mean, it's wild, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, but still, you know, the thing about the Chinese is that they got so many workers there that are still, you know, underemployed. You know, they've got a lot of room to play in their economy. Where here, I mean, we have a lot
Yeah,
of room
they have
too,
like 10 people doing the job of 2 people. It's crazy. If you've ever seen it, you see like the construction sites. There's one guy pounding a nail, and there's eight guys watching him. So that's basically why they have zero unemployment, close to zero unemployment.
But here we're strangling our country a lot because we're consolidating so much of the wealth at the top, but yet you have states that don't have enough people to be in there to even take the jobs they have, like Oregon and like fucking Vermont. I mean, in these places where they're giving you money to come into the motherfucker, but yet people are talking about I got no place to work. I mean, it's crazy. And then they're hitting the immigrants. Oh, the immigrants. It's a fuck the immigrants. You know, they're fucking us over. And you got states that don't have enough people.
I mean, so what it sounds like to me is that you're saying that some of these states are paying for dishwashers, and in the black community they want dishwashers to come in there for free.
Brother, if you ain't hit the nail on the motherfucking head, there it is right there. And that's why when I listen to some of the rhetoric coming out of these guys fucking traps, it's like, wow.
Let me
Wow.
let me end the hangout now. You all don't forget to come back Friday for Money Making Friday. So
this hangout's over, dude. It's over.
Yeah.
All right, peace out, guys.
Y'all have a good one.